The Heat of Betrayal, the new Moroccan-set thriller from best-selling author Douglas Kennedy, is a great summer read. Ten met him recently in Dublin to find out how the story came about.
In May of 2012, I had just gotten together with a woman about 6 months earlier who I'd fallen madly in love with, who's now my second wife, Christine, who's a Canadian psychoanalyst. And she had never been in North Africa. And I had begun to germinate an idea in my head. I wanted to write an adventure story, a modern adventure story with a woman narrator, but also one that turns into a nightmare. I brought her to this walled city called Essaouira on the Atlantic coast and was just watching Christine get kind of blindsided in a very interesting way by the souk, by the absolute extraordinary, almost medieval color. And here you are in what is on one level a modern society, and Morocco is probably the most secular of Arab states, and yet at the same time it's very Muslim as well on another level. There are a lot of women behind the burqa and the chador, and there is this aspect of the Middle Ages to it, and also something slightly sinister, which is interesting to play with. I wanted for a long time to explore, and the novel does explore, the notion of actually the unknowingness of other people, especially the person with whom you are most intimate, your spouse, your partner, you know. And the fact that actually, can you ever truly know someone else? And is it not true that everyone has secret rooms that they keep private to themselves? That kind of other person in parallel that you never show. And maybe the hardest person to really get to know is yourself, if you want to go down that line too. First light, and I didn't know where I was anymore. The sky outside. Was it a curved rotunda of emerging blue? The world was still blurred at its edges. I tried to piece together my whereabouts, the exact geographic location within which I found myself. A sliver of emerging clarity, or maybe just a few basic facts, such as I was on a plane that had just flown all night across the Atlantic, a plane bound for a corner of North Africa, a country which, when viewed cartographically, looks like the skull cap abreast a continent. According to the Flight Progress Monitor, we were still 730 miles from our destination. This journey hadn't been my idea. Rather, I had been allowed to be romanced into it by the man whose oversized frame was scrunched into the tiny seat next to mine, the middle seat in this horror movie of an aircraft. For me, though, I think what's interesting about this novel is Robin, essentially, once Paul disappears, she becomes quietly unhinged. She's wildly guilty about this, even though he's done something horrible. And the question of the father is very much there. Her father was basically a feckless charmer, like her husband. You know, hello, Mr. Freud. Basically, you know, she is married a mirror image of daddy. But unlike her father, who basically squandered everything and ended up dying of a heart attack at a craps table in Vegas, she feels she has to try to save this man from himself, because she could never do that with her father. But she is ignoring all the warning signs around her that she's actually moving towards some sort of abyss. She doesn't know what it is, but everyone is just basically saying, go home, go away. The survival instinct is a very interesting one. I think it's there within all of us. I think some people have it more than others. I think sometimes people, for a variety of reasons, maybe let go and lose the survival instinct. It's hard to say. I can never legislate for how and why a person will react to a crisis in a certain way or not. And I think what's interesting about it is, you know, to live a life is also to have had crises foisted upon you, or to have created crises for yourself as well. That's another aspect of things. It is accessible, and that is not a mortal sin, but you're also going to be made to think along the way and reflect on your own condition. I've often said that I think one of the reasons we read, besides to be able to be transported elsewhere, and this novel certainly does that, is to also remind ourselves that we're not alone. And that, frankly, we all share a certain kind of communality of problems. And I think possibly one of the reasons why I have connected with so many readers around the world is, I think a central kind of theme in all my books is modern anxiety. When I was at uni, I was always the one who asked actually not the very kind of intellectually layered questions, but more direct questions, and I'm still doing that in my books. I'm fascinated about the complexities of trying to build a life with somebody else, of living as a couple, of the tensions between the life you create for yourself and that which you think you should be having. And everyone thinks that way. Everyone has the life in parallel going on at the same time. And the fact that, life is fundamentally messy. And a lot of the time, we are the architects of that mess. In fact, so much of the time. If there's one quote in literature which I think is my great credo, it's from a German poet named Novalis. Same era as Goethe, forgotten, except for this very famous line, which I think is very much behind everything I've ever written. And it's simply, character is destiny.